My father taught me many lessons, but a long, long time ago when I was really in trouble, he taught me what I live by. When I was wondering about whether life's worth living, talking about life, he said life's worth living because you never know how you're going to feel tomorrow. Now, that sounds simple, but it's pretty meaningful when you consider that. And that's been true. No matter how you may be feeling today, you don't know how you're going to feel tomorrow.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Reflections on Living Well podcast, where we explore perspectives on the good life in the 21st century. I am your host, Broderick. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Reflections on Living Well podcast. Today, our guest is Alan Weisser. Alan, a clinical psychologist, chronic pain mastery expert, and former trial lawyer, has dedicated his career to helping people navigate the complexities of suffering. His innovative methods empower individuals to reclaim their lives, discover their resilience, and thrive despite the challenges of chronic pain. He is the founder and CEO of New Options Chronic Pain Management. He founded New Options Incorporated in 2002 to help people with chronic pain management by teaching them to fully engage in recovery. He published his first chronic pain book in 2023. Hi, Alan. How are you?
Good.
You see me dreadfully go through reading those bios. I say this every time, audience. They're used to me saying that. They're like, well, why do you keep reading them then? But I do like to read those bios in the beginning, for people to get a taste of who we'll be speaking with today. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. To you have a varied background there, and look forward to hearing how your take on life, your philosophy on life, basically, what we try to tease out here through the window of the good life, whatever that means for you. I know I just read the bio, but I like for guests to also introduce themselves. Can you say a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go from there?
Yeah, it's a good question because I've led an interesting life so far. Uh, Born in the Bronx, grew up mostly on Long Island, and mostly lived in New York until I came out to Seattle in the late 90s. And originally started my work professionally as a trial lawyer. Did that for a number of years, and then eventually became a clinical psychologist. A lot of my work was done initially, the first 17 years actually, working with the chronically mentally ill, 10 of those in a state mental hospital in New York. That was the beginning of the work that I do now, because that was the beginning of me understanding when you're working with people they're dealing with chronic conditions, you have to treat the person, right? You don't treat the disease, you treat the entire person. I learned that on the training unit where it was a collaborative team, where every different modality added total value because we're treating every aspect of being human. So when I went on to working with chronic physical pain, that understanding was applied to really look at this holistically and understand when a person is having any problem. I don't think in terms of mental health or mental illness anymore. I think in terms of existential problems. It's a problem in existence. So that relates back to my own experiences, shaped by childhood. I enjoyed my childhood. I was kind of preoccupied with cartoons and science fiction. I just liked
Mm-hmm.
anything that was imaginative and that required really going beyond what I knew. I'm curious. As a matter of fact, if you and I met when I was a kid, like under 10, I had one question for anybody who might be a friend of mine. And that question was, if I had a spaceship like Star Trek, would you be willing to join the crew? Now, if you said yes, you were my friend. If you said no, I wouldn't have been interested. So I've always been curious. I've always found being alive fascinating, even when it's been really challenging, and there's been plenty of that. So that's pretty much who I am, somebody who's curious, a seeker. There's always more. We're here for a reason. Life's a gift. And despite me being challenged on that many times, I'm more interested in getting to the gift than I am in going like it's not perfect or it can be threatened. So that's a driving force for me that no matter what happens, I try and find my way through it. I try and find a way to embrace the pain as well as the good stuff. That kind of defines me.
Hmm. Love it. All right, I think this is going to be a great conversation. I don't know, but it appears that based on just saying that, being a curious person, interested in embracing the pain and the good stuff, I think that's I would suspect that's related to your perspective on what living well means. So, I like to ask from the very beginning here, what does living well mean to you? What is a good life? What makes life worth living? Uh, throwing those three questions out there to get you flowing in any direction you'd like to go from those three questions.
I don't want to say sound trite or simplistic. I understand how complicated life is, but basic answer is being alive is what makes life worth living. Because
Hmm.
being alive is full of opportunity. And if you understand that you can find opportunity no matter what happens to you, it keeps it interesting. You know, I've been around for a while, probably a little bit older than I look, but give me another 100 years, I would not run out of things I want to do. I've done many things in addition to the professional stuff. I had a music career and turned down a record contract. I do cartooning to a point where I worked on children's books. I feel gifted that there's so many places in which I can be creative and explore. And I tend to learn just enough to be able to start dealing with finding my own originality in things. And that for me is a discovery process. So, for example, I learned how to play guitar well enough to accompany myself, but I never learned lead guitar because that was requiring too much discipline. But I could take that strumming and those chords and turn them into something that almost sounded as good. So I think life is worth living because there's so much involved in being able to live. But it also means taking risk. And I don't know about you, but I've learned probably more from being outside my comfort zone and being challenged than having things go well and things go easy. So I have not lost my enthusiasm. I've certainly been challenged. I've almost died literally 9 times, starting at age 12 and a half. And each time I go like, yeah, well, I'm not done. There's more. And my father taught me many lessons, but a long, long time ago when I was really in trouble, he taught me what I live by when I was wondering about whether life's worth living, talking about life. He said life's worth living because you never know how you're going to feel tomorrow. That sounds simple, but it's pretty
Hmm.
meaningful when you consider that. And that's been true. No matter how you may be feeling today, you don't know how you're going to feel tomorrow. And if you understand your own power and your own potential, you realize a lot of that's up to the choices you make. So for me, life's an adventure. It's an opportunity. This planet's a gift if we don't destroy it. So I'm still excited.
Love it. Let's unpack that because I think I like that. I don't think it's trite when you say because of life. When you add on, there's an excitement for life. There's this, and I guess it speaks to your personality. This curiosity about life, this interest in this exploratory um, aspect of who you are. So I'll throw this question out there because I think those are important pieces of the good life. There are so many folks in the world who don't have that, who feel like they don't have that. And so I'll just start with that. What do you just say about that? So if you say, okay, some people may look in like, yeah, well, this life sucks. And well, you work in psychologist, you're in psychology, you probably hear this often. Life sucks, and I don't. There's nothing good about it. I don't feel like it. There's nothing to be excited about. I'm not curious about it because it's so painful. What do you say to that?
I say that I get that. I know what it feels like to be thinking that way about things. But if you think about it, if that were true, if there's really nothing of value in this life, then what are we doing here? What's that all about?
Mhm.
Right? What are humans all about? Where did that get started? You get into the big questions, right? But consider the patients I've worked with, the chronically mentally ill, if you want to talk about people that have no way to believe that life is worth living to an extreme, the people with chronic pain and
Mhm.
chronic suffering. No, I respect that. I embrace it. But here's what I say to people, and this is a daily experience for me. I go like, okay, there's nothing in your life that inspires you, or is it that you don't believe you can ever live within your inspiration? And I have never met a human being that does not have something that matters to them. I often say, what are you here for? You know, the big kind of question, or you're 100 years old and looking back on your life, what would be the one thing you feel that was worth having done in your life? What I try and do is help people understand that
Mhm.
if you can connect to what matters to you, you build from there. I think too many people have been led to believe or had enough negative experiences to go like, what's the point? But
Yeah.
I don't think it would be easy for me to show you a picture. But years ago, when I was involved in music more actively, I was spending the summer in Delaware. And if you can picture the scene, it's a wonderful sunny day and summertime. And I'm on the porch with my friends and we're making music. And these two elderly gentlemen approach and they've got instruments. I don't know who they are. And they sit down, they start playing, and I am like blown away. We're talking about harmonica and blues and things of that nature. Actually, I might want to do this. Do you mind if I show you a picture? Because I
No, I don't
think
mind
it'll
at
tell
all.
you a lot about. I think it's going to tell you a lot about what we're talking about.
So the story, I think, really answers the question that we're talking about. So we're playing, and I'm going like, wow, these guys are just so good, right? And then afterwards, we get to talking, and this one particular gentleman, he and I talked for a long time, and it turns out his name is Mississippi Joe Hurt. I don't know if you know blues players from the 30s, but he's one of those guys, along with Brownie McGee, who's another guy
Mm.
from those days. I'm kind of blown away because I know who these people are, right? But more importantly, John and I
Mm.
spent a lot of time talking. It's one of those conversations you see in the movies. Sun's going down. We're talking about it. He's telling me about his life. And this man has been through incredibly bad things. All right. But I took a picture of him.
All right, you see that smile?
Yep.
Now, I go, that's like the Buddha smile, right? And I go, like, John, I don't understand.
Mm.
You've been through so much. How in the world are you smiling? Right? And he says,
Mm.
man, that's why I sing the blues. That's when I understood.
Yeah.
I understood that he was able to smile because he'd embraced the pain of his life and it didn't stop him from loving being alive. I've had a lot of experiences like this that have just reinforced the way I operate. I I operate the same way. If you are willing to embrace the pain along with the other stuff, you don't get to be cynical. You don't get to be pessimistic. You don't get to only see the things that don't work. Every day is full of inspiration. Just look around. You know, if I see sunlight on the water, I'm inspired. I go like, wow, right? The stories of inspiration with people, Stephen Hawking's, watch America's Got Talent and see all the people in that show that have disabilities and instead are inspired. So that inspiration is available for every human being. What I try and do is help people connect to that and connect to what I would describe as their infinite potential, that we're designed to adapt and survive and thrive, that we have power that we don't know we have. And so that power is going to get you to deal with those things and find it was Buddha's revelation, right? There's pain, there's great stuff. He tried to reconcile that over 20 years of meditation to figure it out. And he came up with what's known as the middle way. You balance it, right? It's a question of balance. It's not like stuff's either good or bad. It's like, can you balance those? Maybe even get a bit on the positive side. But if you
Mm.
discriminate between what you like and what you don't like, you're already in trouble. So I try not
Mm-hmm.
to discriminate with life just because it comes with challenges. Being alive is dangerous, right? That's okay. You can deal with it. I'm a martial artist. I've done martial arts for a long time. And martial arts goes like, you don't know what your limits are. And we're going to put you in situations where you're going to have to find out because it's dangerous. It's a good analogy for
Mm-hmm.
life. So you take that as a challenge, right? It's what happened to me when I broke my neck at 12 and a half and was told that I would be a cripple when I almost died. And I took that as a challenge and overcame it. So that's why I go, I understand if you buy into thinking that life is negative and dark and just bad. I understand if your suffering would be a way of making that understandable. But I also understand that you can transcend that if you choose to. That life's about making
Mm-hmm.
choices.
Mm. Yeah, I think I love that, Alan. I think being able to embrace all of life, I think I think that's the challenge. The challenge is to embrace those challenges, to accept those challenges. And yeah, a lot of people who feel like they've been beat down, it's very challenging for them to embrace those challenges and being able to also see the positive aspects of life, to see the goodness in life beyond those challenges. A lot of folks find that very difficult, and I love you brought up
Yeah,
the blues because that's what the blues is all about. It's like, yeah, I
yeah,
sing the blues, I explore the blues because man, this shit is hard,
yeah,
and I just want to embrace it. Hey, it's
yeah.
hard. It's the way it is. Either I'm going to choose life or not, and the blues, those who sing the blues, who embrace the blues in life, they just like, all right, it's hard. I'm just going to take it for what it is. I can't make it other than what it is, but I can just find joy amidst the sorrow. Because I'm not going to necessarily, I'm not going to take my life. I'm going to exist with what I have. And a lot of folks find that very challenging. I'm sure you may get pushback because as I'm saying this, I'm thinking about people in my
Just a little
life.
bit. Yeah, just a little bit.
Um, yeah, I know. I know. I'm thinking about people in my life that are very dear to me, and this is their thing. They're like, well, it's very difficult for them to embrace those challenges because they feel like life has dealt them cards that um, it's just difficult for them to accept. So, what do you say to that person? What do you say to a person that's just pretty much giving up on life, and they're probably not likely to come and see you as a psychologist, as a therapist. Not necessarily what do you say to them, but what do you say about that? And for those listeners I hear who may be like, "Oh yeah, you making it sound like it's easy," and yeah, it's easy for you to say that because look at you, you have personality traits that are conducive to overcome that challenge. What do you say to those folks who keep pushing back?
Yeah, I don't think of it as personality traits. I think of it as innate potential. All right, we're not designed
Yeah, yeah.
to self immolate. We're not designed to be done in by the challenges in life. That's not the design. Right? I don't know if it's
Mm-mm.
divinely inspired or something else, but that's not the way we're designed. Natural selection, right? What do I
Mm-hmm.
say to a people? It's what I've always done. I did this as a child with people in my friendships. Uh, the first song I ever wrote when I was in my late teens. I don't know if you remember the Kitty Genovese case in New York years ago. This young woman who was on the streets of
Mm-mm.
Brooklyn, summer night, plenty of people out and about. Some guy comes up to her in multiple stabbing. She's screaming. Nobody comes to help her, right? My first song was called None Came, and it was about how indifferent people can be to other people's suffering. The work that I did as a psychologist,
Mm-hmm.
I started as a lawyer. I started at Legal Aid Society, representing the poor and the underprivileged. In the beginning, I set the example. I said there are ways in which you can be empowered, and let me show you how the law could work for you. Uh, I say to people, look, if you feel that way, that's completely understandable. But the first step to empowerment, as trite as this may sound, is acknowledging negative realities. Right? Give you another personal example, and hopefully this isn't for personal aggrandizement. I've just learned from things. Years ago, I'm traveling with friends. I'm in Portugal. I'm in this little village. My friends want to stay in town. I've seen these beautiful beaches along the way. I want to go body surfing, right? I grew up on Long Island with Jones Beach. Looked like Jones Beach, right? No humans anywhere, right? I'm a mile from town. Nobody even knows where I am. I go swimming out in the water and I turn to come back in. I'm going out. It doesn't matter how strong I am as a swimmer. I keep going further and further from the beach. And I know that I'm dead. There's no getting around it. And what happens with me is I go like, no, I'm not. No matter how impossible it looks like, I determined to get to the beach. And I don't know how many times I got dragged under. By the time I made it to the beach, I was cut up pretty badly. Now you could say that, why would anybody be able to go through that pain? Because being alive matters that much. Now I got to own that and agree with it and endorse it and go like, but you get to choose whether life's worth living. You get to choose whether you want to try and find the value in life. And if you think that you don't have value, discover what you are. Discover who you are. People do not know what they are. They do not know who they are. I try and help people connect to it. And when people do, I am reassured by working with over 4,000 patients that this is more than possible. I have lots of people I start working with who are actively suicidal. This is not a brag, but that goes away very quickly when I go, you do realize that we're not designed to kill ourselves. Now, maybe some terrible circumstance, terminal cancer, you're being tortured, who knows? But if a human decides to end their life without that going on, it's an existential crisis. Something's gone radically wrong. And I get that people can be beat down. I know what it feels like to be beat down, but I also know that every human being on the face of the earth has the power to overcome that if they know they've got a choice. People think they don't have a choice. They go like, I'm just stuck with this, right? I go like, no, you're not. There's no such thing as being powerless as a human being. But people don't like their options, so they tell themselves they have no power. That's when they buy into what you're talking about. So, sorry if I'm making a speech, but this is something I've dealt with. I've taken the challenge of this. The more difficult and impossible the job seems. When I started with chronic pain, I go, like, what do I think I'm going to do for these people, right? But I'd worked for years with the chronically mentally ill and helped them. I got them out of the hospital. I kept them out of the hospital. I go like, okay, if you can do that, well, what about the rest? So I think people need to know they have a choice. They need to know they have power. They need to know they're here to live life. And some people are more difficult to reach on that than others, but overcoming resistance is kind of something I've learned to do.
I love it. I think that what you're not giving a speech. I don't think. I think that, that's why I asked you the question to explore that, because I know a lot of people who've kind of given up. And we know in our culture, alcoholism is a good sign of people giving up, because alcohol can depress the pain for a moment, at least while you're intoxicated. And people keep drinking because they want to continue to repress the pain. So I think it's important to talk about that, because in your answer, you're giving the, I think, quote unquote, solution to what makes life worth living is, and finding value in life, meaning in life. What really matters in life? And we have to ask ourselves those questions. If we don't ask ourselves those questions, well, of course we're not going to have the impetus to keep going, because we don't know what really matters in our lives. We have to ask ourselves that question. And you're saying something that's really important and I think gets lost, that we do have a choice. Even when we feel like we don't have a choice, we do.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Mm-hmm.
again, I know we don't have, I say it again because people who probably heard me say this on this podcast is that, yeah, we don't have 100% libertarian free will. I don't want to get into that argument. Of course, I can't magically, walk through a wall or nothing. Like I can't do whatever I want to do. I know it's an extreme example. I have limitations. I have physiological limitations. I have intellectual limitations, cognitive limitations. We all have limitations. So you can't just manifest your fantasy. But you can. What we can do, we can choose which way to go. Now, we may be heavily influenced by our life experiences. And some of us who've been really, really challenged by our life experiences, we feel like that our choices are very limited. Yeah, our choices might be limited, but you still have a choice. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that, and recognizing that, if I go outside my house and I can turn right down the road or turn left. And for some people, they feel like, well, if I turn left, there's hell. And if I turn right, there's hell. And I'm like, well, okay, then out of right and left, which hell would you prefer to go to? One that you have a greater probability of getting through it, or not? You still have a choice. We still have choices. And I think empowering ourselves, encouraging ourselves, and people around us, therapists or whoever we're going to see, to encourage us that we do have some capacity to choose, and we can choose situations that may seem like the options may seem unbearable. They may be undesirable options, but within those options, there are some probabilities to get beyond the suffering. And being able to see that, I guess that's important. I guess as I'm saying this, I guess that we have to know that there's a possibility, there's a way out of the suffering, and we
Mm-hmm.
choose to find the places in our lives, the directions, to go in the directions that increase the likelihood of coming out of that suffering, even though it may look daunting when we first look at it. We're standing there at the crossroads, like how do I choose? And where do I choose in this situation? Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's no one answer to that. I'm just saying that it's difficult, but we do
I
have
actually
that
haven't.
choice.
Yeah, I have an answer to offer to that, and I agree with what you're saying. Really quick, do you know who Viktor Frankl is, the founder of existential
Oh yeah.
psychology? Do you know
Mm-hmm.
how he developed existential psychology? What inspired that for him? Most people don't know the story. Frankl was in a concentration camp. He was in Auschwitz, and he made an observation that some people were kind to others, some people were selfish, some people were desperate, and he goes like, I don't get it. It's the same challenge, but people are reacting differently. And that's when he realized that the real problem in being human is we get to choose.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I go, okay, what we're talking about makes sense. We agree about this. A lot of people would probably agree with what we're talking about. But what we've been able to discover is a technological approach to addressing the challenge. How do you get to choice, believe it or not, is by overcoming the world's worst bigotry that nobody knows about. That's not a fair question to ask if you know what I think the world's worst bigotry is, because there's plenty of it out there. Is our
Mm-hmm.
discrimination against anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
That is the heart. That is
Please.
the key. That is the most important thing I've come to understand, because anxiety only happens when your needs are threatened. If you are willing to address the threats to your needs, you will find the truth within yourself. You will find the way through whatever you're being challenged by. But humans don't want to deal with it. We want to get away from it. Drinking, depression, drugs, what you're doing is not allowing yourself to experience anxiety and anger, not knowing that they're the two most important human emotions. And so you can't get to being in a position to make a choice and to discover options, right? I knew when I was in the water in that
Mm-hmm.
beach that if I couldn't focus on getting to the beach, I'm dead. I had to say to myself, you are going to die. Did I want to know that in the moment? Absolutely not. Right. So I think that the technological approach to this is to understand how to be willing to embrace fear, embrace the bad stuff, get through it, and go like, all right, what are my options? I think people get discouraged because they're shutting
Mm-hmm.
down those feelings, they're moving away from them, they're trying to anesthetize them. If you have the courage to face anything in your life that's threatening your needs, that's the power. That's where the power is. So I think it's not
Yep.
just something to understand philosophically. There is a technique, there is a strategy, a technology to get to it.
Oh, I love it. I love how you said that's the power. And, as you're saying, I'm like, yeah, that's what makes life worth living. That to me, that's a beautiful life. That's a good life. It's not always fun. It's like I have that capacity to do that. I have the
Yeah,
capacity to do what you're saying. I can sit with my emotions and my experiences. I don't have to run away from it. How do I honestly sit with it? Now, you're right. There are technologies, there's tools that help facilitate that process. But to know that, what else am I going to do? I cannot escape it. It's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to magically disappear because I want it to. Why not listen to it? Why not see what it has to say?
yeah,
Some people suggest that anger is not a good emotion. I'm like, well, why not? Why do we have it? Our emotions are here to facilitate action, to encourage some type of motion, some type of movement, some type of to do something. If I don't
that's right.
listen to it, if I don't get some sense of what is actually happening in my life, or what is being evoked through in my feelings, in my body, in my mind, what's going on between my narrative, my mind, and my physical sensations. What is being conveyed to me? And if I
Hmm.
don't choose, if I don't listen to that, man, my life is going to be miserable. And a lot of us, because you're like you're saying, we're scared of it, and we're not taught this stuff. You go through the
No,
educational system. You're
no.
taught to be a
I
worker. You're not taught
I
to be
wasn't
a
I wasn't
fully
taught this in
developed.
I wasn't taught this in graduate school either, by the way. I discovered this working
I
with
know,
people with
right?
chronic conditions. No, people with chronic conditions had so much anxiety and anger. I go like, what is that? Anger is the energy and the focus to deal with threats to your needs. The point is, when you talk
Yeah.
about people that are discouraged and pessimistic, what you're talking about is people that have become trapped in anger. Rather than deal with their fear,
Yeah.
they get trapped in their own anger. It becomes a prison instead of an opportunity. You use that
Yeah.
constructively, and you're going to find your way through the challenges in your life. And I don't think
Mm-hmm.
people know that being pessimistic or cynical or the rest of that is a trap. It's an avoidance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we can overcome it. And I think what you're saying is super important, because even those of us who life is going pretty smoothly, and but when those things come up, we want to run away from them. And there are people out there teaching that anger is good. Suppress your anger, move away from your anger. I'm like, no, you're going to be imprisoned by it. You're imprisoned by it because you're trying to pretend that it doesn't exist. Or there's all these other emotions too. We can name them, like fear, like you mentioned, and where we become in I mean, I don't know, it's a strong word to say, but it's like we're enraptured by anger. There are people like that. They're just angry and they just want to, exert their anger onto the world, versus like, okay, what is this anger saying to me? What is this saying about my experiences and the
Yeah,
choices that I'm making, or the imposition of the world onto me? How the world is, how when I say that, I mean the world, the physical world, the cultural narrative that I'm involved in, that I'm in, all of that pressure that is being imposed on us. We're not looking at it. We're not looking at how we are relating to all of these different phenomena, and then we become prisoners to various states of mind or emotional states. And it's like we have to face this stuff. We have to look at it closely and try to make sense out of it. And so, yeah, I think that I love what you're saying, and I know, the audience hear me say this quite often. I know this is not easy. No one's saying it's easy, but I think it's a better option. It's a better choice than being imprisoned by our emotions or various states of mind,
Yeah,
or
I
our
think
narrative, the
that,
story that we have about ourselves.
yeah, look, I think that most important things in life actually always have an element of pain and suffering to them. Uh,
Yeah.
like I said, I prefer to have good stuff happen and pleasurable stuff happen, but like I said, I consider myself fortunate. A lot of it has to do with what I was raised with, the mentality I was raised with. I had a mother who just didn't accept the idea of limit. I mean, she made it to 100.
Mm.
Quick funny story. So picture this: she's heading towards 100 years old. She can hardly see, she can hardly hear, she can hardly move around. She's living in a very nice residence in Florida. It's more like a hotel. And so one day she says, I want to go
Mm.
downstairs. And I go, like, really? You can hardly get around. She says, no, I have to do something every day that makes people feel better. And I knew this about her, right? But I go, like, what do you think you can do? She says, I just want to make one person smile today. I go, okay. So picture the scene. I wish I had this on film. We go downstairs, very nice, like a hotel, right? There's a lot of people sitting in the hallways. There's a dining room. My mother is hobbling around and she's going to each person and going, show me your teeth. Just like that. Show me your teeth, right? Most people look at her like she's crazy. And then finally somebody actually smiles. And she goes, that's it. I've accomplished my mission in life for the day. That's who I grew up with. Right.
Yeah.
So, I get it. I do not ignore suffering. I do not ignore pain, but history is full of examples of people who go, no, that's not it. No dictator in history has ever survived, right? No dictatorship. What's going on in the world right now? That is anger encapsulated running amok.
Yep.
That is what happens when you have 20, 30, 40, 50 years of disenfranchisement of people who are going, we're mad as hell and we're not going to take it anymore, but they buy into being angry. Well, that's the Pied Piper, right? Music sounds pretty good, but they're just walking off a cliff because they've delegated their ability to think to somebody else. So anger is
Mm-hmm.
properly used when you use it to motivate yourself to deal with your threats, not when you motivate yourself to get away from it and to pretend they don't exist.
Ooh, that's it. Beautiful. Yep. Yes. I like that. That right there is it, I think. Yeah, and then you slipped into something there I think is important about about your mom, and and facet of the good life is, I'm sure her going down those stairs, there were challenges, there's some quote unquote suffering associated with discomfort or going down
Oh,
there
yeah.
to try to facilitate someone smiling. And I think, but there's that piece in there, wanting to give to the world, to serve in some capacity, is a part of a good life, a meaningful life. Can you say a little more just about that in general, or what do you think about that?
I'm laughing because my answer may sound strange. I tell people that I never do anything that isn't selfish. That includes all the good
Mm.
things I do for people. I go, because that feels good. It's hard for me to enjoy what I have when other people can't enjoy also. All right. Another thing my mother always
Mm-hmm.
wanted is that people shouldn't share in what she found joyful, right? So I think that's the heart of it, that I would rather have everyone be happy. That's why I love the dojo and martial arts. You're there to be there for each other. You're there to teach each other, to help each other.
Yeah.
There's no competition. You're competing with yourself if you're competing at all. And it's based on mutual respect. We're there to help grow each other together, right? The best relationships are where you're growing together. We're here for each other. We have we have neurons in our brain that are designed to connect with each other, right? Why humans behave as if we don't need each other, I have no idea. Uh, I don't get why they don't get the design here. We are designed to be together, to grow together, to move forward together to what? Don't know what the end game is, but it's way beyond what we think it is right now. And there are people who've seen it, right? There are people who've been inspired. There are people that know this reality is not everything there is to reality. So I hope that people know that trying to live alone or thinking you don't need people and that you don't want to have everyone go along for the ride. Why? Do I take any pleasure in any suffering? Absolutely not. Do I think that the world today does not have to have anybody? We have technology today. Do you really think that there's anybody on the face of the planet that should be starving or without shelter or without basic health care? It's insane. If I was from an alien civilization, I wouldn't touch this planet with a 10-foot pole. Humans are crazy. I think that's why they haven't made their
I know.
presence obvious.
I know we're not evolved enough. Like, oh no, it's a toxic
Not yet.
planet.
But Captain Kirk from the original Star Trek, right? Captain Kirk said, "We are primitive, but we have great potential. I hope we live long enough to find it."
Right. Yeah. Now I'm not. Yeah. Exactly. We have all this potential. We have this potential, and I think we're hopefully. I think we're evolving, and it's those of us who are trying to push the envelope of that evolution. And I think that stressing that. I mean, this has come up so many times on this podcast. People from various walks of life will convey this idea that we're in this thing together. We're designed to be with each other, through the process of evolution. We were selected. Uh, if you want to use the term natural selection, I don't want to anthropomorphize natural selection, but or apply agency to natural selection. But this process of adapting as a species, we have been adapted to survive under the conditions in community, in relationships with others. We do it
That's
through
right.
cooperation.
Right.
We can't just, we're not here to just be selfish individuals. Now, those selfish aspects of us are going to be here, and there are going to be individuals that represent that selfishness in the world for sure. But we are here as a result of cooperation, collaboration, and recognizing that there's value in that, and there's a joy that we get out of that. I am with you. I feel good when other people are feeling good. If they're feeling good and they're not feeling good off of the backs of others, meaning that they're not extracting pleasure from harming others, but if they're extracting or gaining pleasure from the pleasure of others, what if we all of us looked at it that way? You know, um, I get pleasure out of someone else having pleasure. And if and others having pleasure, if we can look at it that way and seeing that, oh, if that's the case, there's this web of joy, of happiness, moments of joy, moments of happiness, moments of pleasure that we all can experience.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to harm you. I don't want to. Because if I harm you, if I see harm in you, that causes me displeasure. That hurts me in some capacity. That harms me. But if I recognize that, oh, when you're happy, I feel a sense of joy when out of your happiness, out of your moments of pleasure. If we can really embrace that, I think we can have a much more beautiful world, of course. Because no one wants to engage in activity that's going to cause harm to others because they know inevitably that that's going to cause harm to themselves if they have that attitude towards feeling good. But I think it's obvious, when you can be at a random, you're at a restaurant somewhere and someone starts singing happy birthday and the folks on that other table are very happy. You see the joy in that person who is getting sung to. I feel good about that myself. I'm like, wow, that feels good to me. I get pleasure out of witnessing that type of experience. And I'm like, if we really just take that into consideration. Now, are there human beings who don't get pleasure out of that? Absolutely. Have they been conditioned to be that way? Absolutely. But nonetheless, that potential exists. What if we looked at the world through that lens? And looking at the world through that lens, it's going to inform the story we tell ourselves, it's going to inform our actions. And I think, how do we convey that? I mean, that's essential what I'm trying to do with the podcast, not necessarily in this particular way, this particular example, but that's the idea, is to convey a set of ideas about how we could potentially live to increase the likelihood of goodness, well-being in the world, not just for ourselves, but for others. Yeah. Because I don't really feel like I can have maximal well-being while others are suffering. Now, I can have some well-being, but the maximum amount of well-being, that potential for well-being and goodness in my life, is stunted because of so much suffering in the world. I That's how I feel.
I agree. I
At any
agree.
rate.
I think, look, this is important, really important, and I share your feelings. Uh, it's kind of the difference between thinking the only way to be powerful is to have power over people as opposed to knowing how much power you
Yeah.
have. You know how much power you have. You don't need to have power over anybody. You can have what you
Mm-mm.
want and what you need, and that will include being together with people and getting what you want. It's part of the evolutionary path for people, but kind of reminds me of when I don't train in martial arts to be better at hurting people. I actually train for two reasons. One, to protect
Mm-mm.
myself, but more importantly, to protect the other person. Because as a trained fighter, I'm more likely to minimize damage. The point is that you and I both know there's all kinds of ways in which human beings get completely distorted and twisted around. Human beings are incredibly vulnerable creatures. That first 10 years of your life, that's going to shape exactly how you operate. And if you understand where to intervene to change it, I tell people, forget about mental illness, think about operating systems. All right. Your operating system might be good, but it may have some non user friendly features. If your thinking is distorted and doesn't support evolution, like judgmental thinking, if you suppress anxiety and anger, you need to upgrade your system. All right.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when they used to talk about deprogramming people. That idea is very toxic, but the idea that we can change our programming, that we can upgrade our system. We're not broken, but where's the end? Where's the end point on potential? How far can you take it? Do you ever watch America's Got Talent, the
No.
TV show?
No,
It's
I
it's a
don't.
talent show with all kinds of different people. Years ago, they had a young man who's brought on the stage. He's probably in his early 20s. He's very awkward and weird looking, and he's got a cane. He's blind. He's autistic, and his mom is bringing him out on the stage, and she's telling the story. And you're looking at him. It's almost a little bit uncomfortable, right? Because he's kind of different. And then he sits down at the piano and he starts to sing because she tells people that this is what he discovered as a child. Picture the best singers you've ever heard, the ones that you listen to and you are moved. And it's mind boggling. It's Elton John. It's anybody like that who is that good, that powerful. It's like a totally different person. It's like all these other weirdnesses about him when he's just talking or walking, it goes away because he's singing completely connected to his heart. That people need to understand that whatever your challenges may be, whatever your disabilities may be, that there's no way to overcome the truth about what you really are. I work with people who are psychotic and institutionalized, and I found out you cannot defeat what human is human. You can bury it, you can put it like it doesn't exist anymore, but there's always that humanness is in there. That power is there. You find that power, you unlock that power. You start assuming it doesn't exist. You don't know what you really are. That's the problem,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's the problem, that people
Mm-hmm.
don't know what they are. And that's why what I do was based developing a technology. Like, how do you do that? There's a lot of self-help approaches. There are a lot of ways to do what we're talking about. This particular approach has a great deal of power to go like, just focus on what I said. Just get into what we're talking about today. And that will lead you to that strength. And I could always see it. When I was a kid, I didn't understand it. I could always see who a person really was. And then later on, that's why I changed professions. I came to realize that's what I know. And so when I talk to people, I'm
Mm.
talking to who they really are. They may not know who they are, but I do. People used to go like, "Why are you friends with that guy? They're obnoxious." I go like, "Not to me, because I'm not talking to the person
Hmm.
you think you know." So I think we both agree about this, and I think the key to it is you want it to change. You want people to embrace the truth about what it means to be human. Help them understand what it really means to be human at a level that's undeniable.
Yep.
Right now, people are afraid to hope. They're afraid to believe in anything right now. If it doesn't become obvious to the large segments of the human race that there is a way to have life be different than it is, other than through destruction, where are we going with this?
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. I love it. Knowing our power, knowing that we have this capacity in us, this capacity to act in so many ways, and learning about that, learning about ourselves. And I think I know you slipped another thing in here. I think we've both kind of mentioned this, and I think it's really a big piece of the puzzle. It's this idea of evolution, evolving ourselves, continually being open to expanding our power, basically our capacity to act and do in the world through this evolutionary process. When we put ourselves in challenging situations, a life challenges us so that we can adapt to it, so we can overcome with that. We can choose selection pressures. Like you and I both we do martial art. You go to you go to the dojo. I go to my studio and do my thing. I'm pushing myself. I'm challenging myself. I'm creating these quote unquote selection pressures that's going to facilitate my evolution in the thing that I'm doing. And I think that's what going to school is doing. That's what learning is doing. We're creating these selection pressures to facilitate an evolution in our being in the world. Life is that way. Life is that way in general, that we are being challenged nonstop. Can I
Mm-hmm.
evolve? Can I evolve myself? Um, can I choose? In your case, in your example, you being out in that water and you're like, I'm choosing, I can embrace that death is right here with me. But you know what? I'm going to choose. I'm going to push myself to overcome this challenge, to
Mm-hmm.
survive. You get onto
Mm-hmm.
the coast, you get on back on that beach and you're like, I'm a different person. I would
Mm-hmm.
never be that same person that I was prior to that experience.
That's right. Yeah.
Because there's you're not the same anymore. To have
Mm-hmm.
overcome that situation, you're in a different place now. Now you have to work to what's the word, to facilitate, to allow that aspect of yourself to be ingrained in your, to become a trait of your being
Mm-hmm.
yourself, personality. These are not perfect words, but that's what life does for us. It offers us an opportunity to evolve ourselves, to move into a greater amount of power that we have, a capacity to move through the world, and I think inevitably a capacity to be a more loving being, a capacity to serve more, because now that I know I have this capacity based on overcoming those challenges that I've had in my life. I mean, I think this is good stuff, Alan. And you're right. There's all these systems. You have your system. You have your based on your experiences, and I think it's important to do what you're doing. You learn these different things, but you're in the room with people, and you take things that you've learned in the past and different systems, and you're gonna have to come with your system based on your experiences and being in the room with people with significant traumatic experiences and also your own traumatic experiences in your life.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to come up with a system that you can, help expedite the process for others and empower them, and let them know that your life can be wonderful. It doesn't mean it's always going to be pleasurable and fun, but do you really want that though? Do you not want challenge? Like you said earlier, when you say, I embrace the challenges, I embrace the pain and suffering. Why? Because that pain and suffering is going to facilitate growth, development, evolution.
That's
And
right.
that growth, development, evolution, you're coming into realization of who you really truly are, like you said. Who am I? We don't know that. But the challenges in life can help us come to understand who we really are. And to pretend that those are challenges shouldn't and don't exist, or to try to run away from those challenges, we're not going to grow. We actually regress. A lot of folks regress as a result of that. I think a lot of all the things that, of course, we can spend hours unpacking a lot of the stuff that you said today in this conversation. And I hope the audience is able to extract a lot of the wisdom that you shared, in not just what you said, but how you said it, and the way you phrase it. I think that's important because you may phrase something different than I do. And the way you're phrasing it is helping me see it in a slightly different way. And that might be that spark to help me get it, whatever it means.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's important. That's why it's important to have these types of conversations, to explore together and learn something about our power. I'm just going to use the words that you used today, our capacity to act and do in the world in a way that's going to be in line with our quote unquote true self, or an aspect of ourselves of that is beyond. True is a complicated word, folks, I know, but an aspect of ourselves that a little bit more, I don't even know the word right now, authentic or real or whatever. I hope you get what I'm saying, folks.
I I agree
Yeah.
with you about the word authentic. That's what we're talking about, being authentic.
Mm. Yeah, Alan, this has been great. It's just so much. I'm over here like my mind is spinning and thinking about a lot of the things that you brought up, and again how you put it into words. And I think what you're doing is super valuable and important. And I know the work that you do, just from our when we met a little bit before this, and knowing the work that you do. I don't, early on you said, though, I hope I'm not giving a story or whatever, a sermon or whatever you said. And I was like, no, I think what you're saying is super super important because you have the experience. You've been in the room with people, and you've seen tremendous amount of suffering, and you've been able to hold people and help facilitate some type of revelation in their lives. So I think what you're saying and what you have to say is meaningful and important for the audience to hear, at least for me. And I hope the audience has gained something from what you had to say as well.
I have a message for your audience. People like you, people like me, other people in the world that see the truth, it needs to become visible. Human race is in trouble. The world's in trouble right now. And you and I both know there are many people like ourselves
Mm-hmm.
and beyond who understand that we don't know what's possible and we're so caught up in what isn't possible. I think there needs to this needs to become visible at a much larger level, that anybody who used to be a spokesperson for this, like Oprah or any of these other people that are out there, Tony Robbins, it's a different time, different generation. I think that many people have lost the capacity to hope. They're afraid to hope. So I think that people of power like yourself and other people who know the truth, it needs to become so visible that it's an alternative to what's being offered right now, because there is no counterpoint that's obvious. And anybody who's speaking the way that people used to speak about hope is missing the point. The challenges have exceeded the previous model for hope, but there is a model for hope you and I are talking
Yeah.
about that needs to become public. And my concern is that people, I know lots of people, I know you do, where's that becoming so public that people go like, there is an alternative here. There's a better mousetrap. You don't need to do that. Because I think right now a lot of people go like, that doesn't work, but what's the alternative? So I hope that this becomes visible at a much higher level, that people like you and myself and other people find a way to get to a level of visibility so people can see what's going on and know there's another way, and that it goes beyond what we both know and gets to a point where people can actually hear it. and embrace it.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, Alan, thank you. Yeah, I would love for more visibility and doing this. And I think I know the audience probably, the small audience that I have right now, and I acknowledge that it's small. I've wanted it to be larger. I've wanted more visibility, but there are certain things I'm not willing to do to get it. So for example, there's all these different marketing techniques and ways to kind of hijack people's minds to start to pay attention to certain things in a particular way. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. So we can take a whole bunch of short clips out of this conversation and then post it all on YouTube, and maybe it might go viral, I don't know. But my goal is like, no. And we need to change the paradigm. How do we encourage people to sit down and listen to a full conversation such as this, the whole full arc of the conversation, the messiness of the conversation, the stutters, the mispronunciations, the like, the grabbing a picture and hitting the mic, and the software doing weird, or the computer over here and that some beeping noise that we don't know where it's coming from. I'm like, that's okay. Life is messy, it's imperfect. How do we sit and listen to a conversation where two people are genuinely trying to understand through the dialogue, trying to make sense out of, who believe that the world can be beautiful, who believe that that there's a better way than what we're currently doing. And I think I'm gonna keep doing this. Thank you for saying what you just said, because there are moments. It's been this year, maybe because of this past election. I don't know. It's been harder to get interviews. It's been interesting this year, but I think I'm gonna keep on. I'm gonna keep trying. I mean, I release it when I can, um, and hopefully people are take on or will, what's the word I'm looking for, start to tune in and embrace this type of conversation and dialogue. And yeah, I'm not gonna put commercials in here. I'm not gonna be selling you freaking whatever crap, you know, in a podcast just so I can make money. And all. I mean, I get it. I understand that, but we're trying to convey something different here. How do we have this? How do we be in communication with each other and have genuine conversation and exploratory conversation, and recognize that within that there are right and wrong answers? Hopefully 10 years from now that people have, can listen to this conversation, and 10 years later can be like, okay, then they were missing out on this. I'm like, great, you're thinking. Hopefully, hell, for me, in 6 months, I can come back and listen to this conversation and be like, I have a better sense now than I did 6 months ago. Okay, that's great. And I think the idea is to inspire through these conversations. And I hope that it continues to grow, and I'll keep trying, what you're just saying is very encouraging. So at any rate, I know that what you just said was great, or I still like to ask this question regardless. Are there any final words that you would like to leave the audience with before we sign off?
Well, for starters, I want to thank you because I've done a lot of podcasts, but this one has been the most liberating of all of them. More opportunity to
Mm.
just be me and not necessarily focus so much on the work. The work is important, but I just really appreciate having had that opportunity. And, you know, I agree with you. I didn't do any of that marketing for my book. So there's been a limited number of sales, even though it's an important book. But kind of reminds me, and this is not the best analogy, the old revival meetings. I think there needs to be
Mm.
innovation meetings around the country. I think there needs to be revival meetings that are based on innovators, all kinds of innovators getting together and bringing people into the tent and going, let's talk innovation. If I was a politician, I'd be going around the country in town halls and going, what do you want to do? How would you like to fix this? not me telling you what you should do.
Mm-hmm.
You tell me what you want, because we have the collective power to fix this. But who's asking us to tell what they want and how they want it done? The real problem right now is in solutions,
Mm-hmm.
not in a disagreement about problems. So I hope people understand that it's the time for people to come together. It's a time for, there's so many more people, I think, in this country right now that do not want what's going on happening. But we've been asleep for a long time. A lot of us don't even know. If you're 30 or under, you think you really understand this is not a normal world. You don't. And Americans have been anesthetized for years for all kinds of reasons. Wake up, all right? Understand that everybody needs to come together in whatever ways they can, because there is power in that. That old expression from earlier in my life, power to the people, power is in the people, right?
Yes.
People need to get that and start getting together and supporting each other. And you're right, not within some commercialized zone, but in a place where people can hear each other.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Alan. This has been great. I hope we continue to talk and explore together offline, and maybe we can have you come back at another time as this thing grows,
Sure.
and we can actually delve into your work. But I still like it like this though. Free flowing, natural, organic conversation. And
I
when
love
you're
it.
allowed to just be yourself, I think that's the best seller, quote unquote seller. It's when we just be ourselves, and then, it's going to, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't like the word take off, but I do believe at some point, some way, somehow, folks are going to realize, like, we just need to sit down and have these types of conversations.
I'll
And
give
I
you
don't need to
something
be
to
trying to
think. Yeah.
sell you nothing. You don't need to be trying to
No,
sell
no,
me something.
no, no. I'm with you,
Let's
and
just be together.
I'm in complete agreement. One last thought. I wanted to do a show at one point called The Question. And what would happen would be there'd be myself and a panel of people like yourself, and you could call in with any question about anything. And we would answer your question by asking you a question. I think
Mm,
that we need to show
that's
people that they know. I think a format that allows, this is what you're doing. This is why I love this interview, because you're giving people an opportunity to answer questions from within themselves, to begin to discover that they act. That's a form of all therapy, is to bring forward what you don't know you know.
mm-hmm.
I don't tell people things. I help people see that they actually have the answers. So people begin to feel more empowered by seeing that they have that, and we facilitate that by asking questions that are, it's a Socratic method, right? Dialectics. You just ask
Yep.
questions and you keep building your level of awareness. I think that's a modality, however that might happen.
Love it. Well, this has been great. And I look forward to seeing you again soon, my brother.
Me too.
Thank you so much for tuning into the show. I hope this conversation has inspired you to reflect on your own views of the good life. If you enjoyed the show and want to hear more inspiring and thought-provoking conversations, please follow, write a review, and rate us on your favorite podcast app. If you are tuning in on YouTube, please hit that like button and subscribe. Your support is very much appreciated.